Hey guys, what is going on? It is me, BikuriBox12 here. Alright, so if there's one thing that the entire Realm community is always looking forward to, it's a new dungeon. Alright, everybody wants a new dungeon. We're always asking for it. Even after they release a dungeon, people are still like,
Hey, when's the next dungeon coming out?
oh, well, I mean, we kind of just put one out, so not for a while.
Yeah, okay.
We are working on something else right now, though.
Yeah, is it a dungeon?
No, we just said, come on, we're not doing it right now.
Nah, please, just play out a dungeon.
Dude, you gotta back off.
No, I need a dungeon.
Oh my god! That's kind of stuff you gotta freaking deal with in this kind of community. I mean, not really, but needless to say, we're always anxious for a new dungeon, and we're excited for it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but, you know, we gotta draw a line at some point. Anyway, so I thought I'd make this little video addressing all of my little conceptual ideas on changes that we could make to dungeons, or new mechanics that we could add to pre-existing dungeons, or ideas for entirely new dungeons. Keep in mind, though, these are entirely conceptual, meaning I don't have, like, stats for enemies. These are all just ideas. So if it turns out that Deca finds one of these to be interesting, or somebody sends this video to them, or a lot of people find an idea to be really interesting, and they make a big uproar about it, then who knows, maybe we can even turn all of this into something. All right, sound cool? That sounds pretty cool. Let's go. All right, number 1. Epic mid-tier dungeons. We got the Epic Pirate Cave, Spider Den. What was the other one? The Woodland, the woody one. Now it's time to kick it up a notch. Let's take the Snake Pit, Undead Lair, and, I don't know, either the Forbidden Jungle or the Abyss of Demons, and turn those into epic dungeons as well. I actually did see a private server video on YouTube with somebody addressing these exact same ideas, and I think it would be a really cool idea, and I would love to see that. And it's just a great way to extend content, because it's a pretty easy way of making a new dungeon, because you technically have the idea there. You just have a dungeon that already exists and then modify it to make it more challenging. So it would take a lot less work on Deca's part. AKA, they should do it. Also, maybe consider adding a treasure room to the Undead Lair. I would love to see that. Same thing with the Forbidden Jungle, although I don't really know what it would drop because there are no potions in there. But still, then that creates an excuse to add more beginner dungeons. Because then the more new player-friendly dungeons that you add, there can be an epic counterpart to it for the more advanced players to enjoy. Number 2. A change in aesthetics. I'm a pretty big sucker for like day and night cycles in video games. It really tends to make the world feel alive. And I'm not saying that we should add that in Realm. Honestly, I don't really even know what that would do. But I would like something similar to happen. Kind of. I think it would be awesome if the layout and the textures of the blocks changed depending on how long the portal is open. Say you kill an enemy and then a snake pit portal drops. If you go in immediately, the dungeon looks all bright and new and there are no cracks in the walls and it just looks like it was first created. But if you wait until the portal is about to close, it's all ruined and destroyed with vines and moss growing everywhere. Maybe there are more enemies, who knows, it's more treacherous because it took longer to get there. Or maybe there are less because it's deserted. It would really make Realm feel more alive and complex. Because let's be honest, Realm at its core, it's pretty simple. It's just a game about squares. So I think adding a minor detail like this would just add to the overall atmosphere of the game, and I think that that's a really important thing to consider. I do understand, though, that this would be a little bit hard to pull off, since this is a multiplayer game, meaning players are going to be entering the dungeon right whenever it drops, or right before it disappears, so who exactly dictates what the dungeon is going to look like? Is it different for everybody? Is it based on the first person? These are things to consider and that ultimately interfere with this idea, but I think it's a cool concept, and it shouldn't be disregarded entirely. Number 3. Atlantis. Alright, so the Ocean Trench is pretty much the big water dungeon of the game. But what if we made an extension of the Ocean Trench? This can either be a completely different dungeon that drops from like the Oasis Giant, or it can be an extension of the Ocean Trench, like say Thessal dies and she drops a portal that leads to the lost city of Atlantis. What I would like to see if this ever became a thing is give us differences in terrain based on branching pathways. I said I was a sucker for day and night cycles in video games. I'm an even bigger sucker for multiple pathways. It's a great way to add replay value to the same area that you've been through a ton of times. So if you enter Atlantis, say there's like a fork in the road, you can go left or right or forward, back, I don't care. But one of those pathways, depending on your location, will be completely submerged in water. And you have to go find air bubbles if you run out of oxygen. But the other pathway is completely safe above ground. And maybe you could have like a middle pseudo pathway that's kind of submerged, but kind of above ground, sort of, in between state. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can add like trap doors in the upper pathway that send you down to the bottom where all the water is. I have no idea how they would put that. Realm is, it's just a flash game and it's not very traditional, so I don't really know how malleable it is, but I would love to see something like this in the future. Number 4. The Heavens. Alright, so this is like actually a dungeon idea here. So we already know that we have dungeons circled around forests, water, ice, fire, even dragons. Freaking dragons have their own archetype. It's ridiculous. But what about the sky? The clouds, the heavens? We don't have a dungeon around that. We already have like 3 different dungeons that take place in a forest. Give me something new! So how about we add an enemy called the Angel of Oryx? It spawns after killing like say Oryx 2, and then it drops the Heavens Portal. And you can even make it locked, so that way you have to have a key, similar to the Wine Cellar incantation. You can have like a magical harp or something. And this can either be a serious or a joke dungeon. You can have it where you just kind of run through it and there are all these angels jumping around shooting you with Cupid's arrow like a Valentine's Day event or something. Or you can make it a serious dungeon where it's laid out very similar to the wine cellar, where you have a top and a bottom path. But if you're spawned on the top pathway, all of the enemies that you encounter will be angels, who are completely harmless to you. In fact, they heal you. But if you're spawned in the bottom pathway, you're greeted with tons of demons in hell. So there's kind of like this anticipation whenever you enter the dungeon, like, well, which side am I gonna be on? Can I go straight to the boss, or am I gonna have a hard time? Is that kind of unfair to people? I mean, yeah, a little bit, but the whole game's unfair if you think about it. But I wouldn't mind seeing something like this. It goes back to the whole multiple pathways concept, and it makes the game interesting, because there's more to do. And with each new dungeon that you add to the game, you can add more items, more white bags, more things to find and acquire. Number 5. Elder Realms. Okay, so anyone that considers themselves to be a seasoned Realm player has probably heard this term thrown around a couple of times. I never really got far into it, so I'm not sure what it was really supposed to be, but from word of mouth, I gathered that it was going to be somewhat of a secondary realm, where you had the beach, lowlands, midlands, highlands, mountains, all of that. But the difficulty is upscaled tremendously, with new textures, enemies, and dungeons. Clearly, this concept would require a lot of work and production time, because you're in a sense replicating all of the content that already exists in Realm of the Mad God. Granted, it wouldn't take as much time to design Elder Realms as it would as the original Realm of the Mad God, but nevertheless, it's a very tall order, and I understand that. But man, would that be cool, a completely new realm to explore and experience. Number 6. Dungeon chests. Alright, so let's make sure we're all on the same page here. A pretty traditional aspect about adventure games and exploring dungeons is that you loot the rooms that you go through. Whether it's The Legend of Zelda, Binding of Isaac, or Hyper Light Drifter. You enter a dungeon, go to a room, kill some enemies, find a chest, open it, and you smile, because, oh yeah, look at that. Realm of the Mad God doesn't have any of that, or very little of it. There are some chests that you can find, like with the Red Demon or the Cyclops God, but never in a dungeon. Yeah, okay, you had the event chests that everybody was complaining about, which was a good start, I'll admit. But I want to see this idea more fleshed out. You see a crack in the wall, or maybe there are some destructible blocks you can blast your way through. And on the other side is this really long hallway with a chest at the very end. Kind of like a treasure room in a way, but instead of needing to kill an enemy to get to it, there's no catch. You just get the item because you found it. You kept a very keen eye out, acted on that instinct, and got rewarded because of it. And you know, the rewards don't have to be anything grand like a jug. It could just be a potion. Any type of item that's universal class-wise, like a potion or a ring. Make exalted rings drop in them. Probably not unbound. That's kind of pushing it. But exalted rings, that could work.
Number 7.
Dungeon statues. So if you haven't seen my Undead Lair Guide video, you should probably go check that out. I brought up the idea of being able to find statues in a dungeon, and if you hit them and made contact with it, you received a buff, like a healing buff or damage, like a paladin. And I thought, what if we made the buff that you received last for the remainder of the dungeon? So now there's like this huge incentive to find it, because by using that healing or damage buff, you can go through the dungeon now much more easily. You can even call your friends over to damage it as well. Now everybody has it. Or you can be a freaking jerk and hug it all to yourself. It also crossed my mind that maybe we could make the statues class specific. It'll be a statue in the form of one of the 14 classes. And if you just so happen to be the very same class as the statue, you are the only one that can receive the buff. Adding this kind of luck-based charm. A pleasant surprise if you find the statue and, oh hey, I just so happen to be the same class. Would you look at that? Or you can do the opposite. Instead of having randomly generated statues, you can make them fixed. So say like in the Abyss of Demons, everybody rushes them on a melee. But say there's like a wizard statue in there, so now wizards have more of an incentive to do it instead of a melee. It might make you want to play a different class when doing that dungeon that you would otherwise just keep on using your warrior or knight or whatever. I don't know, I'm starting to kind of trail off here, so my ideas might be getting a little insane. Number 8. Overlapping floors or layers. Alright, so we've reached the point in the video where my ideas are starting to go a little, what the fuck? So just bear with me on this one, because please don't leave. So what I mean by overlapping floors is maybe we could have a dungeon where you actually scale levels. You increase in elevation. You get to a higher point. Like maybe you could add stairs. And if you climb up them, the platform that you're standing on is actually above the one that's below you. And you can see the area that you were just at below you. And any monsters or enemies that you see can't hurt you because they're on a different elevation. I think it would make the game quite literally pop out because there would be this underlying third dimension without making the game 3D and still remaining faithful to its roots. But this is really just an aesthetic thing, and you know, it could be a cool gimmick for a dungeon. It's not game changing or anything. Number 9. Sandcastle. Alright, so like the ocean trench and the whole Atlantis thing, I want the Tomb of the Ancients to have a sandcastle counterpart. The entire dungeon is made of sand, so every wall is destructible, meaning you have to be careful where you fire your shots because if you break down all the walls, you'll draw aggro to every enemy on the other side. So it really gives you an incentive to mind your shots and not just fire away. That also kind of reminds me of a stealth mission. Could that work in Realm? Stealth? I mean, I guess in like a guild dungeon or if you're all rogues, that could work. Number 10. Minigames. I don't even know why this is on here. I don't even know. Why is this here? I think I just started to trail off and think about other games and realized how fun it was to stumble upon a little minigame and take a break from the main level where you can score some points or extra lives or whatever. I guess, you know, Realm could have that sort of thing like kill 20 enemies before the timer runs out and you'll get this. But that's kind of like the arena. I guess it could kind of fall under the treasure room category. You can find a secret room in a dungeon, but there's a portal and it takes you to the minigame. I don't know. Ideas. They're here. But other than that, that is all that I have for you guys today. Originally, I only had numbers 1 through 4, and that was gonna be the whole video. But I figured if I was gonna make some dungeon ideas, might as well go all out and do everything, right? So, yeah, those are my ideas. If you agree with my thoughts or you have some of your own concepts, please put those down in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright. See ya.